Hello chess friends and welcome to Zarov Chess channel and welcome to our Basics in Chess series. So in this series we're following opening principles, middle game strategies and the endgame strategies. Today we're continuing with some middle game strategies. Again, today we're talking about the evaluation of pawns in the middle game, and I think it's a very important subject because sometimes we forget about pawns when we play middle game. And when we play the middle game, we want to first of all, of course, occupy the center. So the center means maybe these are these files from the C and till F file. So now we want to play, of course, with our pawns on this centralized files, on centralized squares, because when we put pawns in the center, then you of course restricting your opponent's ability to play with his minor pieces. And every piece, but really every piece, is the best in the center. So the queen is best in the center because it covers the most squares on the board. The rook, of course, is the best in the center. The knight, and of course the bishop has the best activity in the center. So when we place our pawns in the center, then you're restricting your opponent's ability to play. Then he cannot play with his pieces in the center. He has to maybe play with his knight towards the edge of the board. Maybe his bishop has a restricted activity. So this pawn central control is very, very important, but that works really only in the middle game stage. In the endgame stage, you want to create, of course, distant pass pawns, which could deflect maybe some minor pieces to protect maybe a potential promotion. But in the middle game stage, this pawn central control has a huge importance, and this evaluation of pawns is really this example here that I wanted to show you today, because you see this pawn on e4 is in the center, and it of course covers these two centralized squares. So it means your opponent cannot jump maybe on d5, or maybe he cannot jump with the knight on f5. He has sort of a restricted area where he can play. If you could just imagine if we could have a pawn here on d4, then you see we would restrict these four centralized pawns here, and your opponent would have to place maybe his knights here somewhere on the 6th rank, or maybe he would have to place them maybe here on the edge of the board where the piece doesn't have maybe a huge activity. You see, on the other hand, here black is covering only the b4 square with this pawn, so this pawn is not so important, at least as I said in the middle game stage. In the end game stage, this pawn could be perfect because it's a distant pass pawn. Your king would be always deflected, but in the middle game stage, it's really sort of unnecessary to have this outside pass pawn. So the evaluation of pawns in the middle game is of course a double. Here this pawn in the center has of course a double strength, so that's why you should play with your pawns towards the center. And in this video we are analyzing the position in which you can give up a pawn to get this pawn central control, because sometimes we place this gambits, we like this gambits, and this comes with the idea with this evaluation of pawns. Let's see now this also a simplified example. You see, we have now a position. Of course this position will never happen, but I wanted to show you this principle. We have an equal position in which black has 4 pawns and white has also 4 pawns. If you could just again imagine some other pieces on the board like bishops, rooks and the queens, you see these 4 centralized pawns are restricting this knight's ability to play. So these knights are not so active like white's knights, because white's knights are of course in the center. They're covering more active squares, better squares, but that's all possible because here black has the pawns on the edge of the board. So far, from a strategical point of view, I think that white has here a slight advantage. Of course, this is a silly example because no other pieces are on the board. But as I said, just imagine this position with some rooks, with some bishops, with some queens on the board. Here, I think white has a great restriction idea and has a great activity with these 2 centralized knights. So that's why it's very, very important to have this centralized pawn. So in order to explain you this more, I've prepared now 2 examples. It's a gameplay by Christiansen here against the legendary Garry Kasparov. You see, white has created this pawn storm, and we have to get rid of these pawns in the center. And Garry Kasparov will show really so creative idea how to get rid of this pawn storm that white has created with the move first c5. So I wanted to pay good attention how Garry Kasparov will steal away the pawn central control from his opponent. After the move c5, we have d5, e6. So far, d takes e6, and after f takes e6, we have now a new position in which black has now 3 centralized pawns. and white has only two centralized pawns, has also, pardon me, three centralized pawns here on the F, E, and C file. So far we have also three centralized pawns. So let's continue the game. Bishop to D3, knight to C6 was played, castling, knight to D4, and now we have knight to G5. Here, Garry Kasparov plays a very nice move, E5, forcing now black to play the move F5. After H6, we have knight to H3, we have G takes F5, and after E takes F5, we have now a new position in which suddenly, again, you see white has two centralized pawns on the C and F file, black has now three centralized pawns, and here comes really a great move by Garry Kasparov. He'll steal now the whole center away from his opponent with a very nice move B5. He sacrifices a pawn, but as I said, this is a complex middle game. We have still so many minor pieces on the board, so this is not an endgame stage. In an endgame stage, you shouldn't try this one. But here, after the move bishop to E3, we have now B takes C4. But I wanted to show you this example, what happens if, for instance, C takes B4, B5 happens. Then we would have the opportunity to play the move D5, and this is now a new position in which we have this huge pawn central control. We're restricting basically this 5 centralized squares here. We are kicking all of these minor pieces off the board. You see how these white pieces now suddenly are restricted. This bishop on c1, this knight, so they don't have huge activity, and we could simply play something like e4, kick away further these pieces, kick away from this central action, because as I said, this is still a complex middle game. In this endgame stage, of course, white would be simply winning because of this 2 versus 1 situation on the queen side, and would win the endgame. But here, after the move b5, in the game bishop to e3 was played, we have b takes c4, bishop takes c4, and now king to h8. We have bishop takes d4, c takes d4, and now knight to d5. We have bishop to a6. Very nice move by Garry Kasparov. Knight takes f6, bishop takes c4. We have knight to h5, bishop takes f1. Queen to g4, trying some checkmate threats, but now after queen to d7, this game was over. So you see, but still, even now, if this game is prolonged somehow, you see this 3 centralized pawns are again kicking away all of this minor piece activity that white can create. Great attack by the legendary Garry Kasparov. So one of the best ideas to steal away your opponent's central control is this very nice Blumenfeld gambit that you should maybe sometimes try. It's, I think, a very nice opening in which you play on this idea. You sacrifice a pawn in order to get this pawn central control. So here, after the move c5, we have d5. So let's go back. Let's see the whole continuation. And so d4, knight to f6, c4, e6, knight to f3, c5, d5. After b5, we have now this idea to steal away white central control, because after d takes e6, we have f takes e6, and now after c takes b5, we have d5. And suddenly you see we have now very nice 3 centralized pawns. On the other hand, white has only one. Okay, we could also count this one, but here I hope you realize the main idea is now maybe to play something like e5, and if that happens, if we get this 3 pawns on the 5th rank, then they're again restricting this all of the squares on the other side of the board. Then you see white would be kicked away, white would be pushed away by the pawns. White would have a really restricted area where to play with his minor pieces, and this could be a favorable continuation here for black. Still, this is a gambit. Of course, you have to be careful if this game goes into an endgame. If you don't make something out of this with this gambit, if maybe white manages to simplify the position, to trade off all of the pieces of the board, then of course white is winning because of this 2 versus 1. So you should be careful with these ideas, but this Blumenfeld gambit is really one of the rare gambits that's actually good. So I'm not so the king's gambit you shouldn't play, but this Blumenfeld gambit has this idea to restrict your opponent's ability to play. And the instructive game that I wanted to show you, it was a game played by Francisco Valeo Pons. Here, after the move knight to c3, you see we can always place something like d4 and still kick away the knight, because you see the knight on f6 is also controlling this e4 square. In the game knight to d7 was played, we have e4. White is desperately trying now to break black center, but now after d4, again we have e5. knight to g4, and now knight to g5 was played. Knight takes e5. Here WhiteElo pawns takes another pawn. We have knight to d4, knight to e4, h6, kicking away the knight, knight to f3, and now queen to d5. Again, I hope you realize that these two pawns are playing such an important role. Again, our main goal would be, again, sort of, so far it's not possible because we would leave simply this d4 pawn hanging, but c4 would be a great possibility. Again, if we manage to do that, then again, you see we have moved to the fourth rank. It's like in an elevator, we're simply moving up higher, and you see again, then we would restrict even this square. So we in chess, it's, as I said, like in an elevator, you're moving up ranks, and your opponent gets back, is restricted and cannot play actively with his pieces. So in the game, knight to d2 was played, bishop to b7. You see now WhiteElo pawns has a great activity with his pieces. These two bishops haven't participated in the game at all. In the game, h3 was played, knight to f6, knight takes, g takes f6, and now f4. But now a very nice move by WhiteElo pawns, because he had really this great activity. After bishop takes d3, we have now a very nice move. Queen takes g2, and in this position, WhiteElo pawns took over in the game, because there is no good way how to protect this rook. You're vulnerable really to your opponent's attacks, and here you could get checked with queen to g3. Then we can simply take the bishop on d3. So in the game here, black tried queen to h5, but now even king to d7 is a great possibility, because this pawn central control is allowing us even to stay with the king in the center. But I wanted you also only to realize how important it is to get this pawn central control with the move e5. You see, we would have a new activity. There's no good way how white should develop his minor pieces. Again, knight to b3 is a desperate try. The rook is hanging. Again, this queen to g3 idea is working. So it was game over here for WhiteElo pawns opponent. So as I said, this is our main goal, sort of, to get these 4 centralized pawns. This could be a great restriction idea. Sometimes it's not possible. Sometimes, as I said, if this game goes into an endgame, you shouldn't do that. But as a middle game strategy, to maybe even sacrifice a pawn to get a pawn central control, I think could be a good idea. You see in this saw in this example by Garry Kasparov here that he really stole his opponent's center with some great b5 moves, f5 moves, really breaking the center through the whole game, get his central control, and then strike back with some great tactics. So I hope really that you realize this idea. Try it out sometimes when you have the opportunity to take over in the center. Do it, because with these pieces on the board, it's really a great restriction idea. If you want to see more videos like this, check out my Basics in Chess series videos from the series, and you can also check my middle game strategies. So this video here will be added on my middle game strategies, but also in my Basics in Chess series videos. And if you want to see the best chess tactics that you can play in the chess game, you can also check out my chess tactics and chess puzzles videos. And you can also subscribe to my channel if you like this content. Thanks you for watching, guys, and chess is the best, of course.